All right, let's talk about a couple of very important cases. Jordan Lorence, how are you, sir?
Well, it's good. I've had better weeks. I wish the Supreme Court would have taken my New Mexico photographer case.
Well, let's talk about that. What is the significance of the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday saying that they will not hear that case, and the lower court ruling stands, and the penalties against your clients stand for choosing not to photograph a gay union ceremony, because there is no gay marriage in New Mexico, as far as I know. The courts have ruled against them. So what's the significance of that in light of the Hobby Lobby case that they've heard oral arguments on, and the case from from religious groups that are soon to follow? How does this fit in?
Well, we're seeing an increase in these conflicts between individual conscience and government mandates, like the HHS mandate cases, and now with New Mexico's enforcement of its non-discrimination law against a photographer who declined because of conscience to photograph a same-sex ceremony, although she would have taken pictures of this couple in other contexts, for their business or whatever. And the Supreme Court could have stepped into this case and said something significant, the photographer case, but it chose not to. It was not the Supreme Court summarily affirming what the lower court said. There's a different process that the Supreme Court has to do that, and they did not do that. All they did was say, we're not going to hear this case. So there's these right of conscience cases, especially with compelled speech. That defense can be raised in other states against these kinds of laws. And I think in ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom, where I work, we represented Elaine Photography. We have at least 3 other cases in the pipeline. I think one of these cases is going to get up at the Supreme Court one of these days, and they will rule the right way to protect the First Amendment rights.
Well, if the court has the current makeup, it might, but if we wait too long and Obama gets, God forbid, to replace a swing vote or a conservative judge down the road for some reason, then it's doomed. But let me ask you this: so this only applies. This only applies to New Mexico. Can others use it as a precedent at this point?
Well, I think what we are seeing is it has emboldened those who support redefining marriage to include same-sex couples to basically go on these hunts for people that believe in marriage as one man and one woman, and then hold them up for public persecution, punishment, to make an example, or to hound them to the outskirts of society, like we saw with the Mozilla CEO in this last week. And I think this is causing a lot of people to say, wait, what's going on here? Maybe this whole campaign to change the definition of marriage is getting out of hand if what it means is going after people who believe marriage is one man and one woman, that's not a free society under the First Amendment. No,
well, I couldn't agree with you more on that. So again, we should take a little bit of heart. In other words, you wanted more, much more. You wanted the court to take this case. They didn't, but they didn't do the worst thing that they could have done, correct?
That is right. And I think if there's any silver lining, is that it's fueling the debate. It's one more example of showing how the other side on the marriage debate is overreaching, and I think making the classic mistake that people do when they begin to feel the power and gain control of government, is they begin to manipulate the arm of government to suppress those who have opinions they disagree with. And that's why we have the First Amendment. And there are voices on the other side, like Andrew Sullivan, who are beginning to question loudly, what have we become as a movement if we are persecuting our enemies? Well, and I think he's right on.
Well, he's a homophobe. You know that. I mean, it's obvious, right? What becomes of your client?
They're figuring out what to do, just assessing their options. They're grieved. I think they were hopeful that the Supreme Court would take the case, and what to do going forward, they're not quite sure at this point in time.
All right, let's move on to another case that you're involved with as well. and that is a federal appeals panel has ruled that New York City has a right to ban churches from holding worship services in school buildings. So in a sense, the Christians have officially, as Todd Starnes wrote, officially become second-class citizens in the nation's largest city in the United States of America.
Yeah, what's interesting, I mean, just to draw a link, is that in Elaine photography, she's got to treat everybody equal. But in New York City, they pull out the establishment clause and they single out the churches to treat them worse than everybody else. So they got a different tool for whatever the game is, and it ends up that the religious groups or the religious individuals get treated poorly in this situation. New York City is the only major school district in the country that prohibits religious groups from using the empty school buildings on the weekends for worship services. If you go to Los Angeles or Chicago or Miami-Dade County, which I think are the number 2, 3, and 4 largest school districts in the country after New York, which is number 1, it is no problem for a church or a synagogue to rent a public school on the weekends.
Right, and that's the key here, rent. They're not looking for freebies. They're paying for this.
That's right. But even though they're paying for it, the appeals court in one of the most Orwellian sections said that it was a subsidy to religion, raising establishment clause concerns. And the way they got that is that, I mean, I'm making fun of their logic, but it was something like, if a church were to rent, you know, the Trump Towers or the Javits Center or one of the Ritz-Carltons, it would cost $1 zillion. So the churches are a lot cheaper. They're paying, I think, Bronx Household of Faith, the church we're representing at Alliance Defending Freedom, I think they're paying like $500 a month. Well, that difference between the $1 zillion at the Ritz-Carlton and the $500 is an in-kind subsidy. But the problem is that everybody gets the same in-kind subsidy. If you're the Boy Scouts, or you're a labor union, which we documented meet there, or if you're the filmmakers that make Law and Order episodes, they rent the schools to film there as well. So they're basically limiting only the religious users who do worship services from this benefit that's publicly available to everybody else.
Well, it was a 2-to-1 decision, and the one dissenting judge, John Walker, said that the Board of Education, quote, plainly discriminates against religious belief and cannot be justified by a compelling government interest. I mean, obviously, I agree with him. And you know, how many schools actually rent out or churches rent space in public schools in New York?
The number is always changing, but there are approximately 1,200 facilities that could be rented, and probably at any given time there's around 75 out of 120. 1,200. Give or take maybe 15, and probably a low of 50, 60, somewhere in there. It's probably no more than 100, but it's a tiny fraction. They don't take up the whole schools. There was a church I visited at a school in Brooklyn, and it had a basketball league going on at the same time, as well as a farmer's market. So they're not dominating the forums, and there's plenty of empty buildings on a Sunday morning for other people who aren't sleeping in or drinking lattes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Starbucks to go to.
So what do you do next here? Are you going to appeal this?
We are going to appeal this to all the judges on the Federal Appeals Court, which is about 12, and if not, we'll take this to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck, and you know, it should be pointed out, and I think it goes without saying that your organization does such wonderful work and representing so many great causes, and that, of course, is the Alliance Defending Freedom, and we thank Jordan Lorence for his time. Jordan, thank you very much for talking about both cases with us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having us on, and if people have any issues like this, I hope they would give us a call at Alliance Defending Freedom, 1-800-TEL-ADF, because we're here to help you preserve your religious liberties.
And what's your website?
It is alliancedefendingfreedom.org. I just urge people to call and not give up their rights.